tomorrow. How is tomorrow? All right. Well, Sarah, should we get rolling?
Let's do this.
All right.
Well, it's afternoon where I am in Oakland, California, so I will greet you from that time zone. But wherever you are, we're glad that you were able to join us for our understanding marketing session. The best way to learn something new is to ask questions. So we really want to encourage you all to use the chat to engage with us during this talk. We want to keep it as relevant as possible during the time that we have together. So at a high level, we hope that you walk away with a better understanding of common marketing terms and roles, methods for measuring success, and ultimately how to measure these insights to become a more strategic partner for marketers within your company and or your clientele. Next. I'm Sarah Fruey, Director of Brand and Digital Experience at Pantheon. Currently, I manage our marketing website and the digital growth initiatives at Pantheon to help improve our customer experience and optimize conversion marketing efforts for the team. You can follow me on Twitter at Sarah Fruey. It's my name. Don't spell it any different on Twitter. You can find my writing on web ops and other web-related content as a guest contributor on many popular websites, as well as the Pantheon blog. And I'm really excited to be here today with my friend and colleague, Drew Gorton. We have come from different walks of life and landed in the same place. I have a much more traditional marketing background. I've worn a lot of hats. I've even run teams like Soup to Nuts as a VP. And now I have found myself managing a web team, which is not something I thought I would do. Drew, on the other hand, has a more traditional developer background and has found himself on a marketing team. But we have a lot to share today. And without further ado, here is Drew.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I think I'm also likewise super delighted to be presenting together with Sarah. I hope the combination of our backgrounds and experiences and the human beings that we are and the professionals that we are helpful to all of you. Sarah kind of came to where we are together collectively as colleagues on a marketing department through like a long history of professional marketing. Like her resume is pretty awesome. If you check it out, I don't know if she gave her LinkedIn or not, but it's like all of the different titles and positions along the way. And whereas I came through to this place via being a developer, actually go back 25-ish years, started doing web development kind of early on. Later on, went independent, and that turned into becoming an agency owner. Still developed through that process, and then I joined Pantheon years ago now. Away from the computer, I also am into all sorts of other things there, a couple of which are languages and travel, although less travel recently. And I'm certainly into things like the typical nerdy developer stuff, like board games and science fiction and Battlestar Galactica, and like references to Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter will not go unnoticed. I will track them if you make them in the chat. So let's get rolling here. So speaking of chat, I'd really like for everybody to take a moment to answer these questions in the chat. So collectively, or actually individually, sorry, for yourself, I want to hear from you how well you understand marketing, right? So scale of 1 to 10, 10 being amazing. I know all the things about all of the marketing, everything. 1 being not even sure how to spell it. Where are you on that scale? So just go ahead and drop in a number 1 through 10 for yourself. And for those of you who don't happen to be watching live, if you're watching the recorded version, that's okay. Actually, I would take a moment and drop in, like just write on a piece of paper or something like this. We're going to be coming back to this. Is actually, it is relevant even if you're watching the recording. All right, seeing some numbers, awesome.
So a lot of people kind of in the middle of the scale here. It's a good place to be.
It is a good place to be. Marketing jargon, next up, 1 through 10. How well do you understand things like MQLs, CPL, SME, lifetime value, etc.? Like all of the jargon, there's a ton of jargon. We're going to be talking through a bunch of it today. So what's your level of content? Again, like I don't know what any of these 3-letter acronyms are, is be the 1, and 10 is like I invented them all. Like I wrote them down the first time, and then people started copying me. And then additionally, one last thing, open text. I'd love to hear people, like, what is one thing that you want to learn from the session? And as Sarah and I are going, we think we have about 30 minutes of, our rehearsals are about that and sort of prepared content, and that means lots of time to be able to address individual questions. That's really important to us. So if any of you have something, like if you share what it is that you are hoping to learn from this session, we'll be able to tune our additional commentary and other things to really make sure that we try and address that. All right. So with that, remember those numbers. We'll be coming back to them. So at the highest level, like I think it's actually worthwhile just taking a step back and saying why we think this is relevant and important. I was actually in a session earlier today, Tim Broker was doing, it was on why JavaScript is coming to eat you. He was tracing through the history of web development. And one of the sort of points he made was that there have been different eras. And he had a line demarcation around 2014 as being, this was a time when things changed. And I think, I think that time frame is actually pretty relevant to this conversation as well. Back when Drupal was first invented, it was, the first original lines of code, like over 20 years ago now. And the web was a different place, and the people who were doing things for websites and expecting things of websites were, different people in different roles. In the last 5 or so years, it's become increasingly clear that the people who need, want, buy, pay for, measure, iterate on ambitious digital experiences are marketers. And that's a long-term trend. Like, that's been changing for a long time. But only recently, I think, has Drupal really started to realize that. If you go back, like the marketing track or marketing content at DrupalCon would have been absolutely just absent 5 years ago. And sometime a few years ago, I think maybe Seattle, there was the first marketing track that there was like actual dedicated content. This is a place that we really need to, as a community, as a software project, understand who marketers are, because ultimately, again, these are the folks who are using the tools that we are hoping to provide for them. And if we don't know what they're doing and how they're measuring success and what they're thinking about, we're failing them. And we, frankly, run the risk of becoming irrelevant. So with that, Sarah, talk to us a little bit about websites.
Now more than ever, websites are the biggest, most important digital marketing investment organizations are going to make. They can either be a cost center or a revenue generator, depending on how you manage them. And according to Gartner, on average, businesses are actually spending 23% more on their websites than on their online advertising budgets, which is pretty crazy. Next. And they're doing this because everything leads to their website. So if your company or clients are spending budget on display, social, SEM, or any of these channels, I could pretty much assume that your marketing team's main calls to action are to drive people to the website. And if marketers aren't investing resources in for their customers, they're failing them. And this is where you can help. The more you understand about how and why marketers are managing their digital campaigns, the better off you'll be in finding opportunities to enhance those efforts to drive growth for your business. Next. So marketing is very challenging and it's constantly evolving, but essentially it's just communication. We're putting messages and experiences out into the world, hoping to attract the right audience and ultimately lead them to a desired action, like purchasing a product or service. Next. There are many roles that a marketer can take to complete this task, and here are some of the most common. But depending on the nature and needs of a business, each marketing team will be staffed slightly differently. And depending on the size of the organization, a marketer could be wearing multiple hats or be one of many in a massive department of hundreds, if not thousands of colleagues. I noticed there's some folks here that are marketers, and we're really glad to have you. Are there any roles here that you don't recognize? We'd love to hear about it in the chat, and we can take a stab at explaining them to you. Some of the ones that I just kind of like to highlight that I think are really related to the web experience are clearly like when you bring in your web team to the marketing team, which we do at Pantheon. Like our web developers are embedded within the marketing function, and I think that that's really where a lot of teams should be right now in terms of prioritizing that role and that experience for their companies. Other areas that I think are really important tied to the website are like marketing operations, the folks who are setting up all of the measurement tools, and tracking to make sure that we're monitoring user behavior on the website and we can report on that in a meaningful way. Growth marketing folks are the ones who are going to try and optimize those conversions and actions on the website so that we're going to lead towards a KPI, key performance indicator, that's really meaningful to the business. And they'll manage folks like demand gen, social media, sometimes, often event marketing, anything that's going to really like lead to more leads for the business. And there's a wide variety of other roles like product marketing, PR, communications, et cetera. But this is just kind of like a nice little overview for folks who want to know more about the different types of people they might be encountering in the marketing space. Next. So in addition to having very specific roles on the team, marketers leverage what is commonly referred to as a customer funnel. We've got one version here, but a quick Google search will reveal many nuanced versions as well. Ultimately, the idea is the same. It tracks customer journey from awareness to action. With each step, you narrow the pool as you hone in on your ideal customer. Next. There are many ways to push your prospects through the customer funnel, particularly on the web. At the top of the funnel or the awareness phase, we want to cast a wide net with free, easy to access content like blog posts, how-to videos, etc. Then, once you've become more familiar with your offering, you want these folks to re-engage with your brand. And when you see that activity happening, they move to the interest phase. You can promote gated assets like webinars, ebooks, white papers, where you provide valuable content in exchange for their contact information. Next, if you've done your job well, your audience will continue to the evaluation phase, where they will request more information like a custom quote or add items to their shopping cart. And these are major buying signals. And this is where sales and marketing get very excited and they start to really turn up the volume on their efforts. And finally comes the action phase, when your audience ultimately converts from a prospect into a customer as they donate to your cause, complete a checkout, or sign a contract.
Yeah,
Next.
and one of the things Sarah just mentioned that I'd actually like to really highlight is the difference between awareness and interest. So on this slide, we've got blog posts as awareness and webinars or ebooks, perhaps more accurate or more comparatively, as interest. And those things are just content, right? I mean, it's just content. Blog post, ebook, white paper, these things are all content, but we're putting them in different spots on the funnel. And I'm wondering if anybody, Sarah said this, but I wonder or is willing to take a crack as to like why we are putting those two different kinds of content at different spots in this sales and marketing funnel. I'm going to look for that in the chat and just pause awkwardly. Narrowing down to ideal customer. I like that. Okay, that's true. Yes. PII versus no PII, which is and passive active. Yep.
PII is personally
like
identifiable information, in case you don't know that term. We're going to learn so many new terms today. So many three-letter acronyms.
That was developer jargon, right? So because there's an exchange there. Typically, when you're getting an ebook, you're giving up a little bit of information about yourself, right? You're giving an email address. You're giving maybe first name, last name, maybe the company you work for, some other things like that, right? And it means that you are just a little bit more serious, right? You're, well, all right, blog post, great, I liked it, that's fine. But like, I'm interested enough in the thing that you're describing that I'm willing to tell you a little bit about myself. And yeah, there's some awesome, like, I love the answers in the chat. So great, good job, everybody. Sarah, what comes after? Uh-oh. Sarah, I think we might have lost your audio. I don't know if anybody else.
Hear you talk. It's a webinar. Right. You're on mute. I am now not on mute. So thank you for highlighting that. Yeah. So there is actually one more phase, which is once you've acquired your customers, you can actually turn them into what are commonly called advocates who will happily spread the word about your business and help you acquire new customers by filling up the top of the funnel. So you see that arrow going from the bottom all the way to the top because they're going to be the ones out on the street spreading the word, tweeting about your product, telling their neighbors. And a lot of companies, including Pantheon, will actually create special programs to recognize the value of advocates and reward them so they can acknowledge the great efforts they're making in evangelizing your business. And often they will tap these folks to gain valuable insights to help make their business even stronger, which will often result in new products or services that come from these valuable individuals. And at Pantheon, we value them so much, we actually call them heroes. Next. So just as the customer funnel evolves over time, so has the marketing landscape. And this wouldn't be a marketing webinar if we didn't flash the MarTech Lunascape slide to show just how crowded and complicated the marketing technology space has become. This is really overwhelming for marketers, and it's an amazing place for you to step up and be a more strategic partner when vetting vendors for your MarTech stack. When it comes to solving a problem with technology, build versus buy will always be a place for developers and agency folks to step up and have opinions that drive meaningful marketing decisions. Now let's zoom in a little bit closer. Hopefully you can see web experience building and management section, right? Like it's super easy to find at this level. What about Drupal? Okay, let's go a little bit closer. Can you find it now? If you can see the Drupal logo, tell us in the chat and you'll win a virtual high five for me. Does anybody see it? It's kind of in the middle. It took me a while. Drew actually had to point it out to me.
I just got, we got a couple of yeses.
Okay.
All right.
Yeses. Cool.
Here's where it is.
There's the arrow for those of you who can't see it. Cool. Yeah. Well, now I'm going to pass things over to Drew, or he's going to break down some of those 3-letter acronyms that you kind of nod your head at in presentations like this, or maybe at your own company, but you might not fully understand them. We've already shot a few of them out today. And again, this is a safe space, so we really want you to use chat to ask for more information if there's something that you need clarity on. I'll be monitoring the comments while Drew sort of breaks things down for us.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. And this is like the point of this last thing, right? There are a couple of eye-popping sort of like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe that complexity is all real. It is. We are one option in one category that of things that are all interconnected in order to do communication. So there's tons of technology, right? Content management system, CMS, right, is just one of them. There are, CRMs and digital asset management systems, whole tons of other categories. There's a whole category, if zoom into that thing, there's a whole category of tools there to evaluate other tools, right? And it itself is a crowded little series of, like 30 or 60 different icons, all professing to give you tools in order to understand how best to fit these things together. It's a really complex space. There are, with each of these technologies, they're pretty much inherently all about measurements, or you judge their success based on measurements. CAC, CPL, MQL, etc. We're going to get into a bunch of them right now, actually. We're going to go through 9 right now, and I think more importantly, give you hopefully the confidence to go ahead and deconstruct them yourself on the fly if need be, but even just like after the fact, Google it, it's okay. Like give you the framework to be sort of able to understand what these things are about. And then as a bonus, we're going to invent 3 new ones actually. So stay tuned for that. Really exciting stuff today. So the way you'd use these numbers. All right, let's just talk about nonprofit.org. So there's a nonprofit out there in the world that is doing some reporting. They are looking back at what happened in Q2, and they're looking at their analytics programs and saying like, hey, like it's time for me to report to my colleagues. What did we do? What were our results, etc. And these are the numbers. And they're looking at their spend in paid social and ads. They get a certain number of visitors per month and impressions per month, $1,000 per month, etc. They also get a certain amount of traffic, 10,000 visitors a month, or their averages in Q2, as it turns out. They've got newsletter signups as a thing that they pay particular attention to because they know that donors, which they also get a certain number per month, 1,500 per month, they know that donors are way more likely to be newsletter subscribers along the way, and they've just discovered that over time. They know that like it's like 10 to 1 donors are all subscribers, or there are 10 donors who are newsletter subscribers for everyone who's not. So they sort of marked this and said like, you know what, that's kind of interesting. We should pay attention to newsletter signups and measure that in a particular way. So it's all just numbers. We've all probably seen numbers like this before. We maybe, have looked at them for our own website and kind of wonder about these things. And that's the starting point to start doing some common measurements. So I'm going to start with one that probably all of us have heard of. It's the click-through rate, CTR. So if you are looking at how much you are spending on ads, this is the number that tells you how many people click through and what percentage it is. So it's straight math, 2,000 visits divided by 50,000 impressions. So do that math. We know that they have a click-through rate, CTR, of 4%. All right. One acronym. Cost per click, CPL. This is, or CPC, excuse me. This is also probably something that most of us have heard or maybe had a little bit of exposure to. But again, straight math, 2,000 visits for $10,000. We have a cost per click of 20 cents. A cost per lead is, once again, like straight math, might be a little bit less familiar for us, or for many of the folks in the audience. But again, straight math, we know that they spent $1,000 in ads and they trace back $100, or excuse me, 100 newsletter signups to those ads. And so they know there is a cost per lead is $10. And a lead is kind of a judgment call, right? We'll talk about that actually next, but it's sort of like, again, they mark this along their journey, and they know that, hey, there's a certain set of activities or one key activity that happens, and we sort of like note that as this is significant. And in the case of this organization, that's the newsletter sign up. Once you have those numbers, you might then ask, well, great, numbers, are they good or bad? And the answer is, it really depends, right? And so when you are a professional marketer, or your clients are professional marketers, they're asking that question too. And the way that they answer that is two ways, principally. One is to look at the past. So last month, last year, it was this. Did the number get better or worse? And then also by comparing with our peers. And so, for example, in a nonprofit, if it was like a theater, nonprofit theater, they might look at other nonprofit theaters, or if it's a news organization, other news organizations. It's so like people with a similar kind of business model, organizational structure, goals, etc., will have similar numbers, and this is a place where you benchmark with your peers and such. This is also actually, jumping ahead a little bit, a place where, for those of you who work frequently with specific industry verticals, if you're an agency, for example, and you specialize in working with organizations of a certain type or several different types, knowing these numbers is a powerful thing. So I can guarantee that if Sarah and I were to ask, we work for Pantheon, if we were to ask our colleagues at Acquia, who is a competitor, for their numbers, CPL, CPC, etc., I would not expect that we would get those answers, right? But if you work with, a number, again, of people who are potentially competitors, you have to, respect privacy and like be, like your integrity is really important. At the same time, if you know these numbers and can give guidance on what works and what doesn't, it's incredibly valuable information to folks like Sarah and myself who are trying to measure a lot of things and get better. So let's talk about that. That's three of them. So CPC, CPL, CPC, CTR, whatever. I'm throwing myself off, but hopefully, again, like none of those. That's not very, it's not rocket surgery, right? It's straightforward stuff. So let's talk about some of these other ones. MQL is a marketing qualified lead, and this is probably one of the most ubiquitous three-letter acronyms in a marketing department. And it is a signal from the marketing team that there's something has happened. They believe a human is interacting with the website or with the organization in a way that's somehow special. In this case, for example, like a newsletter sign up. That somebody like the people in the donations team or the sales team or someone else might want to reach out to them, or maybe you send them an email. Again, depending on the organization, different things. But ultimately, a lot of marketing departments are judged on their ability to produce MQLs, which is like, again, a number of people have come through, they've read blog posts, they've done the other things, they've finally done either one specific thing or several collections of things to say, like, there's enough here. I think this person is really interested in us. We should talk to them. Customer CAC, customer acquisition cost. So the customer acquisition cost is the total cost of your sales and marketing efforts relative to the number of customers you get. So if you spent $1,000 in sales and marketing over a period of time, and you got 1,000 customers, $1,000, customers, that's a customer acquisition cost of $1. If you spent $1,000 and you got one customer, that's customer acquisition cost of $1,000. So again, straightforward math. Different businesses, different industries have very different numbers there, but it's something that people keep an eye on and is like a long-term thing to understand. Another really common acronym is often abbreviated different ways, but it's lifetime value, customer lifetime value, total customer lifetime value, etc. And that is something, again, that will vary significantly by industry. It will be something that most marketing teams will either know or really, really, really want to know because it guides what you're doing. So for example, if you're the kind of organization where it's a repeat donation or a repeat purchase, you know, I do this every week. Like I go to my grocery store every week. My lifetime value for my grocery store is very different than someplace where I might just go and buy something, you know, one single time. Get, you know, for example, like here we are in COVID times, doing little house projects, get a little something, it's, you know, whatnot. My grocery store is seeing me time after time after time. I've got one very different lifetime value to them than I do to somebody like an online hardware store, which I, you know, purchased something from to replace something that was broken like last week. Sales and marketing efficiency is another one. This is something that a CMO or chief marketing officer or chief revenue officer, often CRO or head of sales, this is something that they might be focused on and thinking about sort of like as a overall program cost. And this is the total cost of all of the things you did for sales and marketing last quarter or last reporting period versus your total new sales this quarter or this reporting period. So again, if we spent $1,000 last quarter on all of these things, on salaries and ads and everything else, and we got $1,000 in new business, that would be a sales and marketing efficiency of 1. And different organizations, different industries will have different numbers here, you know, like, and compare versus your peers in your history, but somewhere between 0.5 and 1.5, again, depending on your business. These are the places you want to be. Return on investment is, I think, probably obvious to all of us. I think we probably heard that around. I left it in here because I think it's relevant to know that this is like a super common thing for marketers to be asked to prove. Like, what is the return on the thing that you just spent some money? That question is happening constantly to marketers everywhere. And oftentimes people are measuring things month over month, abbreviated MOM. So hopefully that gives us a little bit of, you know, a few acronyms, but also maybe some tools. Like, it's okay. It is, again, not that hard. It's hard to do well, but each of these acronyms are not the things to be scared of. So with that, I actually want to try a pop quiz, and I just took the cheat sheet off the screen. So if I say the CPL is down 35% MOM, go ahead and answer in chat. Anybody who's bold enough, everybody. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? And if anybody's willing to say why, I'd love to see the answers. So again, CPL. Oh, there's so many good. Like, woo, all right. I'm very happy. That's right. It is a good thing. Unless you're getting, ooh, Heidi with a nuance. Awesome. Yes. Your cost per lead going down, costs going down. Great. Month over month. Wonderful. And there was at least one person in the chat who pointed out, unless the leads are not any good any longer. And that is a real world problem. So for example, in the case of the organization that's trying to get people to sign up for the newsletter, if they just, you know, gave everybody 1,000 dramatically, it would not help the rest of the funnel. It would just be a waste of money. And so that's something that you have to kind of keep an eye on. Like when you're looking at these numbers, you don't want to overemphasize one particular number versus another. You kind of see them there. And if you see one spike way up and something else fall way down, it's a sign that you're probably not doing something well. All right. Sarah, how can we make a marketer happy?
It's a really great question. I think all the things that you were sort of explaining just now really can add up to a good solution there. I would say that despite all the data and tools that we have access to, most marketers are going to tell you that they're really continuing to struggle with attribution. Attribution being the way that we measure the impact of a customer throughout their journey in the funnel in a meaningful way. So counting all their activities, tying that back to revenue, and having like a dollar amount or a value to them that we feel really confident about. It's really hard and it's really complicated. However, executive teams seem to think that we can tell them exactly how each prospect walked in the door, why they made their purchase, but it's really never that simple, and the data could always be better. Next. And as developers and agency partners and folks getting their start in the marketing department, this is an area where you can really step up and shine and help marketers build better reports that generate actual insights versus vanity metrics. When you're doing your initial like Google Analytics setup and stuff like that, it's interesting to look at page views, but when you start to look at like page depth and see where are these people traveling, where are they dropping off, that's much more insightful than to say, hey, we got 100,000 visitors this month. Well, maybe like 90% of them bounce. That's not necessarily a great thing. So that's the difference between showing something that like looks really great versus something that's very insightful and can actually like change behavior for your team. On the agency side, you know, gather information from your clients and your projects that are both quantitative and qualitative. You've got ton of information that you can share, and you can white label it. It's not like you have to give people like information about like which client it was or whatever, but if you're able to share data and insights from other partners that you've worked with and show your customers or potential customers how they can make smarter decisions in terms of running and managing their website operations, that's going to put them at the top of their short list in terms of wanting to work with you, because that shows that you're invested in their success just as much as you are for your own business. And those are the types of people that they're going to want to work with. And, you know, not only will this make them happy, but it might get you that promotion you've been pining for or that new contract extension that you've been shooting for as well. Next. So to recap some of the things that Drew and I have been talking about for the past little while, you know, communication is a journey and it becomes more challenging as you go along. And reporting on the impact of the efforts that are following that customer journey becomes equally difficult for marketers and related folks alike. So to be a stronger partner to your marketing colleagues, you know, focus on better communication. Make sure that you're building solid integrations. Nobody likes to deal with bugs. They want the stuff to work. That like will alleviate some stress in their lives. Get smarter reporting. Like, don't just do the base layer of like what people are asking, but come to the table with more information, more insights. Help them make smarter decisions, and they're going to lean on you more and more as a valuable resource. And ultimately, what you want to do in this situation is help them improve their numbers. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that. And especially once you understand how they get to those numbers, you're going to do a much better job of it. Next.
Yeah, I guarantee you, for those of you who are working for marketing stakeholders somewhere, those people have numbers that they are reporting on. And it depends, you know, like, again, like the overlap between the specific set of numbers they might be focused on, you know, like sort of mapped to different parts of the org chart. But if you don't know what their numbers are, ask them. Like, they have numbers. They are reporting on them. If you don't know what they are trying to improve, you're doing them and yourself in turn a disservice, right? Understand what it is that they're trying to improve and focus on that. And that's, you know, turns out incredibly valuable and really aligns you as well. There's nothing quite so clear as like, are these numbers going up or down? Should we do more of this or less of this? And again, like, they're being asked to report on these things. You should be aligned with them. You should be there together with them. And that's, again, how you build these long-term strategic relationships with marketing clients, which are incredibly valuable over time to both parties, to all parties.
Absolutely. So we've learned a little bit today, hopefully, from us. How do you see yourself being a more strategic partner? We'd love to hear about it in the chat. Is there anything that we've said today that has inspired you, or things that you're currently working on that you're like, hey, I'm doing this right, like, awesome. What do you think would make you more valuable as a resource as you're working with your colleagues?
And I was just going to type an answer back to Nicole. Nicole, we haven't posted the slides yet. I will post them directly after this talk. My apologies. If you follow either Sarah or myself on the Twitter, and we are our handles have been on a lot of the slides, they're not on this one. I will we will post them out and make sure that they're available. We'll get them on the DrupalCon website as well. So I'll do that as we finish up here. Sorry about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Should we talk about agencies?
Marketer, that is Mark Eder. That is a tremendous coincidence of a name there. Mark Eder is watching us and just mentioned that he feels like we keep calling his name. I wonder why.
Oh,
all right.
I didn't read your full name. Now I get that's amazing.
All right, agencies. What does it mean for agencies?
Cool. So this is actually really good for business. I've worked with agencies in the past, and I continue to do so today. But as a marketer, how I've worked with them has really changed. Rather than hiring them for lengthy, expensive relaunch projects, more recently, I've actually been looking to them on more strategic initiatives like improving our customer journey on the website. I just wrapped a project where we're working on improving website performance so that we could have faster loads times to improve our user experience and SEO rankings and things like that. And so one of the things, like now in the time of COVID, like budgets are shifting, budgets are getting cut. Marketers can hardly plan 1 week ahead, much less a couple months or a year out. And so thinking about landing a big project right now is probably becoming harder and harder for you. I would only imagine, just knowing how my own budgets have been impacted. And so I think that you really start to need to think about, if you're not doing this already, like shifting your goals away from those big projects, which will still happen, by the way. Like some companies are going to need to spend that money and do those big relaunches. But start to think about establishing more long-term relationships with your clients by becoming embedded with theirs. You want to become their go-to resource for experimentation and website optimization efforts, as well as help them implement those efforts on their websites. I've also engaged with agencies on like coaching my team so that they learn new skills. Like that's another way that you can be a resource as an agency partner. These projects are going to help prove to the budget holders that your work is adding value to the business, which is what we've been talking about all along. We need to prove it, right, to our bosses to get more money to pay more people. And if you do that really well, that small contract can really turn into a lucrative ongoing partnership, which I think is what most of you folks want to do on the agency side. So lots of opportunity there to really be a stronger resource in the long run just by understanding their needs better. I see Seth. I've worked with him in the past. Hi, Seth. Shout out to Lillibot.
Yeah, and so I would say, like, as you're thinking about, you know, the work that you do and you know, how to communicate that value to clients and potential clients or stakeholders or bosses or colleagues in different departments, et cetera. If you describe yourself in the ways that, like on the left-hand side here, are, you know, we're calling out as very interesting, saying something like, we're able to improve our typical client's cost per lead by a certain %, or any of those other numbers or things like that, that is incredibly powerful. And I know of at least one agency who's got some great stories along these lines of, if you can frame your work in that context, you can change the conversation quite literally from, wow, that seems like a lot of money you're asking for, to, wow, how about if we spent 2 times the amount of money that you're proposing? And those actual numbers being, you know, absolutely lived experiences for people who are, again, able to quantify the results in terms like this. So sharing, you know, measured things, et cetera, like simplified reporting, all of these things are really incredibly valuable. I think probably most of us by now have learned that talking about, you know, once upon a time, Tim actually talked about this in his JavaScript session as well. Like once upon a time, it was sufficient to hang out your shingle and say, you know, we know the Drupal really, really well, and boom, you know, work would come in. You could actually, you know, make a good living by just being an expert. But frankly, these things are just less interesting. And it's not that it's bad to be a Drupal expert, or is, you know, like you should be proud of the fact that things, you know, you've written are used by hundreds of thousands of sites. That is something valuable, but it's not as valuable. And frankly, the agency that describes himself as with the things on the left there, at least as I look at the screen. I don't know if it's transposed or whatever. Anyways, the very interesting versus the less interesting. The very interesting is going to win every single time. So with that, I want to actually take a moment to, we said we would invent 3 new acronyms. Here they are. So warm up your fingers, get ready to chat. We want to know, like at the beginning, we had everyone type in 1 through 10, their understanding of marketing. If that went up, if your understand marketing index increased, your UMI went up. Please type in UMI : yes or no. So UMI, yes. Long-term partner, I like that. All right. And then go ahead and also for marketing jargon confidence. We said, like, what's your confidence in things like MQL and CPL and things like that? If your MJC has gone up, yes or no?
Seeing lots of yeses here, Drew. I think we
Yes.
did something right.
Right. The learn the one thing we didn't really emphasize this that much, but LTOT, yes, we already see Tim, and he's actually in there all, already as though it was forecast on the thing. But your LTOT, did everyone's LTOT go up? Hopefully. And this, sort of bring this back. This is what marketers are doing constantly, right? So, in the end, Sarah mentioned this, like marketing is hard, but it's also, like at its core, I think it's kind of simple. It's communication, right? And so Sarah and I just spent a bunch of time communicating with you, but like the next question we might ask ourselves, was that communication effective, right? And so you start measuring things. And here we made up 3 things, which we thought were relevant to the presentation. And our KPIs are turning out to be lots of yeses. So yay.
And you could actually help us measure the effectiveness of our talk today by filling out our survey. We would love to get feedback.
Ooh.
It's a gift, so be honest. But yeah, help us evaluate our communication style here so we can make it better for the next round.
Very much appreciated. Thank you. Yeah, and the link is actually in the chat right now.
Definitely pinned it to the top, I think.
Yeah, pinned to the top. I'm actually going to drop it into the chat as well, just in case, like the recorded audience.
Thanks, Melissa.
Oh, yay. Yay. Thank you, Melissa. Perfect. All right. With that, we are running out of time. But thank you all for being such a wonderful audience. Again, we really value your feedback, and we are happy to answer questions off of the stage. We are in the Drupal Slack. We are in, in the hop-in. I'm planning on heading back over to the Pantheon booth to be there and be available. I think there's also a Slack channel. I'll be monitoring all the channels, basically. Yep. So come find me. Come find us. We are happy to answer. Now I've been talking for too long. Sarah?
Absolutely. Appreciate you all for making it to our session today.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.